She never expected a stranger to change her life. Emily was a single mother fighting every day just to keep a roof over her daughter's head. No help, no family, no chances left. But everything changed the moment a young millionaire crossed her path and made a decision that shocked everyone, including her. But what Emily didn't know was this. Letting him into her life would come with a price, one she was not ready to pay. And when the world discovered their secret connection, her life spiraled out of control. This is the story of how a struggling single mother and a lonely millionaire were pushed into each other's lives, and the unexpected turn that would change everything. Emily Parker rushed across the quiet morning street, her worn backpack bouncing against her side as she held her daughter Lily's hand tightly. Lily, only 6 years old, tried to keep up with her mother's quick steps, her small legs working hard. Emily whispered encouragement, telling her they would not be late even though she knew they already were. Being a single mother meant every day started with a battle against the clock, and every late minute meant another warning from her boss. Still, Emily did her best to hide her exhaustion from her daughter, offering a warm smile whenever Lily looked up at her. The bus stop was almost empty when they arrived. Emily lifted Lily into her arms so she could stay warm, rubbing her back gently. A cold wind swept through the street, carrying the early scent of rain. Emily loved her daughter more than anything in the world, but the pressure of raising her alone was a constant weight on her shoulders. Bills piled up faster than paychecks, and the eviction notice tucked inside her coat pocket felt like a ticking clock she couldn't silence. She prayed Lily would never sense the fear she carried. A sleek black car suddenly rolled to a stop near the bus shelter. A tall man stepped out, frustrated, speaking quickly into his phone. His suit, though slightly wrinkled from stress, was clearly expensive. His expression carried the look of someone used to control, someone who didn't often hear the word no. Emily didn't recognize him, but the man was Ethan Montgomery, one of the wealthiest young businessmen in the city. His company had been on magazine covers for months, yet Emily had no time for magazines or news. Her world revolved around Lily, not millionaires. Ethan's call ended abruptly, and he pressed his fingers against his temples. His driver had cancelled last minute, his meeting was in 20 minutes, and traffic was already starting to build. When he looked up, he noticed Emily holding Lily, their clothes simple but clean, their expressions tired but gentle. Emily offered him a polite nod, the kind strangers give when they briefly share a moment in the same space. Ethan returned the nod awkwardly, not used to people treating him normally. When the bus arrived, Emily prepared to board. The stroller wheel jammed on the sidewalk crack, and she struggled to lift it while holding Lily. Without hesitation, Ethan rushed forward. "Here, let me help," he said. Emily, startled by his sudden kindness, allowed him to lift the stroller onto the bus. She thanked him with a genuine smile, one that caught him off guard. He was used to business smiles, calculated smiles, false smiles. Hers was different. Inside the bus, they sat on opposite sides, but Ethan couldn't help noticing how Emily comforted her daughter, how she spoke softly, how she seemed to carry an invisible burden with grace. Lily dropped her small toy rabbit, and Ethan instinctively bent down to pick it up, handing it back with a gentle smile. Lily thanked him with shy sweetness, and Emily nodded in appreciation. Ethan wanted to ask Emily her name, but her phone vibrated. She read a message, her face tightening with worry, her boss asking why she wasn't there yet. She whispered to Lily that everything would be okay, though her eyes told another story. When the bus stopped near a school, Emily stood, lifted her daughter, and hurried off. Ethan tried to call after her, but the doors closed too quickly. As the bus pulled away, he watched her disappear into the crowd. He didn't understand why, but something about her stayed with him long after she was gone. Later that morning, Emily arrived at work late again. Her manager, a man who had never spoken to her with kindness, called her into the office. He complained about her punctuality, ignoring her explanation about Lily's health and the broken stroller wheel. Without sympathy, he handed her a termination notice. She felt the world collapse inside her, but she forced herself not to cry until she was outside. Losing this job meant losing their last steady income. As she walked home holding Lily's hand after school, Emily tried to hide her tears. Lily noticed anyway. "Mom, did something bad happen?" she asked. Emily shook her head gently, telling her everything would work out. But inside, she wondered how she would pay rent, how she would feed her daughter, how much longer she could keep pretending to be strong. She had no family to help, no partner to rely on, no savings to fall back on. All she had was love for her daughter, and she prayed it would be enough. Meanwhile, across the city, Ethan sat in his office, staring out the window during a meeting he could no longer focus on. His mind drifted back to the woman on the bus and the child who hugged her so tightly. He didn't know her story, but he knew she was struggling. The image of her forced smile lingered with him. He had everything: wealth, influence, comfort, yet she had looked stronger than most people he admired. He didn't know it yet, but their paths would cross again much sooner than either of them expected. The next morning, Emily woke up early, long before sunrise, sitting quietly at the edge of her worn mattress while Lily slept peacefully beside her. She stared at the eviction notice on the table, feeling a pressure in her chest she could barely breathe through. She had 14 days left. 14 days to find a new job, pay the overdue rent, and somehow keep her daughter safe. She pressed her hands to her face, trying not to break down. She couldn't afford tears, not when every minute counted. With no job to rush to, she walked Lily to school slowly, pretending they were simply enjoying a relaxed morning. Lily skipped along the sidewalk, humming a little song, unaware of how close their lives were to falling apart. Emily kissed her daughter's forehead at the school gate and promised she would be there early to pick her up. She always tried to keep her promises, even if the world around her didn't keep its promises to her. After leaving the school, Emily visited 3 stores asking for work, but all of them gave the same polite rejection. They needed someone full-time, someone with flexible hours, someone without a child to care for. With each rejection, her hope thinned a little more. She walked home slowly, knowing she would soon have to tell Lily something she didn't want to. Meanwhile, Ethan's day was the opposite of hers. His schedule was packed with meetings, investment decisions, and interviews. Yet his attention drifted constantly. The image of the woman and child from the bus kept returning to him. He had met thousands of people in his life, but something about her stood out: her strength, her quiet sadness, her determination. At lunch, he found himself walking toward the same street where he had caught the bus the day before. He didn't know exactly why, only that he hoped to see her again. He didn't. Emily spent the afternoon cleaning the small apartment, trying to distract herself. Every object she touched held memories: the tiny shoes she saved from Lily's first day of school, the birthday cards they made together, the blanket she knitted during sleepless nights. She wasn't afraid of starting over, she was afraid of failing her daughter. She sat at the kitchen table, staring out the window, wondering how life became so heavy. A knock on the door startled her. The landlord stood outside, arms crossed. Emily forced a polite smile, hoping he wasn't there for what she feared. He reminded her of the overdue payment, and though she begged for more time, he shook his head. She had 2 weeks, no more. When she closed the door, she pressed her forehead against it for a moment, fighting the rising panic. Later that evening, Emily took Lily to a small park near their building. She wanted Lily to run, laugh, and forget the worries that hung over them. While Lily played, Emily sat on a bench, lost in thought. That's when a familiar voice reached her ears. "I thought that was you." She turned and saw Ethan walking toward her. He wasn't in a suit this time, just jeans and a simple dark jacket. For a moment, she hesitated, unsure whether to smile or apologize for leaving so quickly on the bus. Ethan sat at the far end of the bench, giving her space. He asked softly, "How's your day going?" Emily wasn't used to strangers caring about her day. She replied politely, saying it had been long but fine. Ethan studied her expression, noticing the exhaustion behind her eyes. And the worry. He introduced himself properly this time. Not his company, not his wealth, just his name. Emily introduced herself as well, and for a while they simply talked. Their conversation flowed more easily than either expected. Emily spoke about motherhood, Lily's love for drawing, the funny stories from her old jobs. Ethan found himself laughing, genuinely enjoying the simplicity of the moment. At one point, Lily ran over, showing Ethan a flower she had picked. He admired it with dramatic seriousness, making the little girl giggle. Emily watched the interaction with mild surprise. It was rare for anyone to take such interest in her child without judgment or pity. As the sun set behind the trees, the cold wind returned. Emily said they had to go home and thanked Ethan for keeping them company. He wanted to offer her a ride but sensed she would refuse. He simply smiled and wished them a good night. Emily and Lily walked away, hand in hand, while Ethan watched them until they disappeared around the corner. For some reason, the evening felt unusually quiet after they left. Emily returned home feeling a strange mixture of sadness and comfort. It had been a long time since someone had spoken to her without expecting anything in return. She didn't know who Ethan truly was, but she sensed sincerity in his voice. Still, she reminded herself that trusting strangers was dangerous, especially now. Across the city, Ethan stood by his apartment window, thinking about Emily again. Her smile, her strength, her tired eyes, they lingered in his mind as if he had known her for years. He wondered if he would see her again. And he hoped that he would. Their lives, moving in opposite directions, were about to collide once more, this time in a way neither could have predicted. The next few days were a blur of repeated disappointment for Emily. She woke up early each morning, dressed in her neatest clothes, and walked from store to store, office to office, hoping someone would give her a chance. But the answer was always the same. Not enough experience. Not enough availability. Not the right fit. She smiled politely each time, thanked them for their time, and walked out with her heart sinking deeper. Every afternoon, she picked up Lily from school with the same loving smile, hiding the fear growing inside her. Lily never noticed the panic behind her mother's eyes. She talked excitedly about her drawings, her classmates, her teachers, and Emily listened, forcing herself to stay strong. One evening, after another fruitless day of job hunting, Emily stopped at the small grocery store near their apartment. She planned to buy bread and a few vegetables, stretching the little money she had left. But when she opened her purse at the checkout counter, she froze. Her wallet was nearly empty. She hesitated, debating which items to remove, feeling shame burn in her cheeks. The cashier waited patiently, but Emily could see pity in her eyes. Before she could decide, the cashier scanned the rest of the groceries and said, "It's already paid for." Confused, Emily looked around, expecting someone to step forward. But no one did. A stranger paid earlier for a young mother and her daughter, the cashier explained. They said not to make a big deal out of it. Emily carried the grocery bag home in silence, her mind racing. Who had paid? Why? She didn't believe in coincidences, and her thoughts returned to Ethan. But she quickly dismissed the idea. They barely knew each other. Why would a man like him help her? Across the city, Ethan sat in a meeting with his board of directors, pretending to listen. His thoughts weren't on the graphs or projections displayed on the screen, they were on Emily. After seeing her at the park, he had felt something he hadn't felt in years, a tug in his chest that pulled him toward her world. He didn't want to overwhelm her with offers she might refuse, but he couldn't ignore the instinct that told him she was struggling. He had quietly arranged for the grocery store manager to keep an eye out for her, though he asked them not to reveal his name. It wasn't charity, he told himself. It was simply the right thing to do. But part of him wondered if he was lying to himself. A week later, Emily finally found part-time work at a small diner a few blocks from the school. It wasn't ideal, low pay, long hours, and a boss who barked orders more than he spoke, but she accepted it gratefully. Anything was better than nothing. She needed to keep Lily fed. She needed to keep a roof over their heads. On her first day, she wore a borrowed uniform that was slightly too big. She worked non-stop, taking orders, cleaning tables, running back and forth between the kitchen and the front counter. Exhaustion hit her quickly, but she pushed through it with quiet determination. She kept a picture of Lily in her apron pocket and touched it whenever she felt her resolve fading. That afternoon, just before the dinner rush, the diner door opened, and Ethan walked in. He had been hoping to find her, but when he actually saw her behind the counter, he hesitated. She looked tired, more tired than when he saw her at the park. But when she noticed him, she straightened her posture and smiled, though he sensed it was forced. "Hi," she said, surprised. "What are you doing here?" "I was just passing by," he replied, though they both knew it wasn't entirely true. He ordered a coffee, partly out of politeness, partly so he could stay longer. Emily brought it to him and sat for a moment when her boss wasn't looking. They talked quietly, and for the first time, Emily let him see a glimpse of her struggle. She didn't complain or seek sympathy, she simply told the truth. She had lost her job. She had found this new one. She hoped things would improve soon. Ethan listened carefully, feeling a tightening in his chest. He wanted to tell her he could fix everything with a single phone call. He wanted to offer her a job in one of his companies. But he held back. He didn't want to scare her or make her feel small. Lily arrived shortly after, running into her mother's arms. Emily lifted her up, spinning her gently, laughing for the first time that day. Ethan watched them, his heart softening. When Lily noticed him, she gave a shy wave. Ethan waved back, smiling warmly. Emily finished her shift late that night, walking home with Lily asleep in her arms. Ethan offered them a ride, but Emily refused kindly, insisting they were fine. Ethan didn't push. He simply walked with them for part of the way, keeping a respectful distance, making sure they reached their neighborhood safely. That night, after putting Lily to bed, Emily sat alone at the small kitchen table, thinking about Ethan. He was kind. He was sincere. He was unusual. But she reminded herself that nothing in her life came without a catch. Good people were rare, and she didn't know whether she could trust someone like him. Still, she couldn't deny how her heart felt whenever he smiled at her. On the other side of the city, Ethan lay awake far longer than usual. He stared at the ceiling, wondering why he couldn't forget the warmth in Emily's eyes, the softness of her voice, the courage behind her exhaustion. He had everything money could offer, yet for the first time in years, he felt something missing, something he had only noticed when he saw her. He didn't know where this path would lead, but he knew one thing with absolute certainty. He wanted to see her again. And soon, their worlds would collide in a way neither of them expected. Over the next 2 weeks, Ethan visited the diner often, never enough to make Emily suspicious, but enough that she began to expect him. Every time he walked through the door, she felt a strange warmth spread through her chest. She tried to hide it, reminding herself that she barely knew him and that his life was surely nothing like hers. But something about his presence calmed her, even on the hardest days. Ethan, for his part, kept his distance carefully. He didn't want to overwhelm her with generosity or reveal too much about himself too soon. He simply talked with her, laughed with her, and listened. But each visit made it harder for him to ignore how deeply he cared about her and Lily. He found himself looking forward to their conversations more than any business meeting. One rainy evening, Emily rushed into the diner soaked from the storm. She apologized to her manager, even though it wasn't her fault. The roof of her apartment had begun to leak earlier that day, dripping onto the kitchen table. She had placed pots and towels everywhere, but the leak was getting worse. She didn't know how she would pay for repairs, and the landlord wouldn't help unless she cleared her debts. During her break, she stepped outside under the awning to breathe. The rain fell heavily, streaking the street with silver. That's when she saw Ethan approaching, umbrella in hand. He looked worried. "You walked all the way here in this weather?" he asked. Emily nodded and shrugged. "It's just rain," she said, but the tremble in her voice gave her away. He held out his umbrella to her. "You need this more than I do." She hesitated before taking it, offering a quiet thank you. It was such a small gesture, but it felt enormous to her. No one in her life had looked after her like this in a very long time. Over the following days, Ethan noticed something different in Emily's behavior. She seemed exhausted, more than usual. Her smile was weaker, her eyes more distant. When he finally asked if everything was all right, she hesitated before admitting the roof leak. She tried to make it sound small, unimportant, something she could handle. But Ethan could tell it was serious. He wanted to help, more than anything, but he knew Emily wouldn't accept direct assistance. So he found another way. The next morning, while Emily worked, Ethan secretly contacted her landlord. He paid the overdue rent and arranged for repairs to be made immediately. He left strict instructions not to reveal who had paid. The landlord agreed, surprised but grateful for the cash. When Emily returned home that evening, she stopped in the doorway, stunned. Her kitchen ceiling was fixed. New panels replaced the water-damaged ones. Fresh paint covered the walls. She ran her fingers over the smooth surface, barely breathing. Lily asked excitedly if a fairy had done it. Emily didn't know what to say. She sank into a chair and covered her face, overwhelmed. She wanted to be grateful, but she hated not knowing who had helped her. She felt small, dependent, confused. The next day at the diner, Ethan noticed the change immediately. Emily was quieter. Thoughtful. Distracted. She brought him his usual coffee but didn't sit with him. He watched her move around the diner with a heavy expression. Finally, during a slow moment, she approached him. "Can I ask you something?" she said softly. Did you do something for me?" Ethan froze for a moment, then carefully shook his head. "What makes you think that?" he asked. Emily studied him, trying to read his eyes, but he kept his expression calm. She didn't press the issue. Still, a part of her sensed he was lying to protect her feelings. That evening, as she walked Lily home from school, paparazzi cameras flashed across the street. Emily held her daughter close, startled. She didn't understand why photographers were outside the diner earlier that day, taking quick shots while Ethan waited for his order. She had assumed they were taking pictures of someone else. But they weren't. 2 days later, Emily's world changed in an instant. A headline appeared online: reclusive young millionaire spotted with mystery single mother. Her photograph was plastered everywhere, her walking home, her serving Ethan coffee, Lily holding her hand. Emily's stomach twisted when she saw it. She felt exposed, humiliated, betrayed. She hadn't asked for attention, and she certainly didn't want the world speculating about her life. She waited outside the school for Lily with trembling hands, terrified someone would approach them, terrified this would affect her daughter. All she wanted was to disappear. That night, Ethan showed up at her apartment building. Emily saw him through the window and came outside quickly, shutting the door behind her so Lily wouldn't hear. Her voice shook with anger and fear as she demanded to know why he hadn't told her who he really was. Ethan tried to explain that he wanted her to know him as a person, not as a millionaire, and that he hadn't meant for the media to find out. Emily didn't believe him. She accused him of playing with her life, of putting her daughter at risk, of pretending to care when he had lied from the start. Ethan stood in the rain, taking every word. He deserved it, he thought. He had wanted to protect her, but instead he'd hurt her. He tried one last time to explain, but Emily's voice cracked as she told him to leave. Ethan stepped back, devastated. When he left the building, he felt a deep ache in his chest. He had never wanted anything so much as to protect Emily and Lily, yet he was the one who caused their pain. Inside the apartment, Emily leaned against the door, tears falling silently. Lily tugged at her sleeve and asked why she was crying. Emily forced a smile and told her everything would be okay. But she wasn't sure it would be. Their lives had become tangled in a way neither of them could untangle easily. And the consequences of that entanglement were only beginning. The days that followed were some of the hardest Emily had faced in years. Everywhere she went, she felt eyes on her. At the grocery store, people whispered. At the school gate, some mothers stared openly, their curiosity disguised as fake smiles. Emily shielded Lily from all of it, holding her close and speaking softly to reassure her, but inside she was breaking apart. She didn't want attention. She didn't want rumors. She wanted a quiet life for her daughter. At the diner, the situation became unbearable. Customers would point at her, whispering about the millionaire's mystery woman. Phones angled toward her more often than she liked. Her boss, annoyed by the attention, called her to the back room and told her the drama was disrupting business. He didn't fire her directly, but he said he would prefer if she took a long break, which was his way of avoiding confrontation while still pushing her out. Emily left the diner that day feeling humiliated and defeated. She walked home slowly, the weight of everything pressing down on her so hard she felt she might collapse. She didn't know how to explain any of this to Lily. She didn't know how to escape it. She didn't know how to pay rent now that her income was gone again. Across the city, Ethan's world wasn't much calmer. The media storm had exploded, and journalists camped outside his office building. His board of directors demanded explanations, and tabloids twisted the story into every shape imaginable. He refused to comment on any of it. He didn't want to expose Emily or her daughter further. But staying silent only made the rumors grow. For the first time in his life, Ethan felt powerless. His wealth couldn't fix this. His influence couldn't undo the damage. He stayed in his office long after everyone left, staring at the city lights and thinking about Emily's face the last time she looked at him, hurt, betrayed, afraid. He realized something painful: he missed them. Not just Emily, but Lily too. The little girl with the shy smile who handed him flowers at the park. The little girl whose safety Emily protected fiercely. He missed hearing her laugh. He missed the softness Emily tried so hard to hide behind her exhaustion. But he also knew he had no right to approach them again, not until Emily wanted him to. One night, while Lily slept, Emily sat at the kitchen table, staring at a stack of unpaid bills. Her hands trembled as she tried to calculate how long they could survive. She sold a few belongings she didn't want to part with. She skipped meals so Lily could eat more. Every option she considered led back to the same problem. She needed help, but she had pushed away the one person who had genuinely tried to help her. Her pride was strong. Her instincts stronger. She didn't want to rely on someone who might disappear or disappoint her. She'd been let down before, by friends, by family, by Lily's father. She had built her world around the promise that she would never depend on anyone again. But that promise was becoming impossible to keep. A few weeks passed with no contact between them. Ethan forced himself to stay away, giving her space even though every part of him wanted to reach out. He tried to bury himself in work, but nothing helped. His mind drifted back to Emily constantly, wondering if she was safe, wondering if Lily was eating well, wondering if he had destroyed the only connection he had ever cared about outside of business. Late one evening, Ethan walked through the city alone. No driver, no entourage, just him. The streets were quiet, the cold air sharp against his skin. He passed the park where he had first talked with Emily and Lily. He remembered Lily's small hand placing a flower in his palm. He remembered Emily's shy smile. He stood there for a long moment, breathing in the silence. Eventually, he found himself standing in front of Emily's apartment building. He didn't plan to go there, it just happened. He knew he shouldn't intrude. He knew she had every right to send him away again. But something told him this was where he needed to be. He waited outside for several minutes, unsure whether to knock. His heart pounded harder than it did during company negotiations worth millions. Inside the apartment, Emily sat on the floor beside Lily's bed, brushing her daughter's hair with slow, gentle strokes. Lily looked up at her and asked softly, "Mom, are we going to be okay?" Emily swallowed hard and forced a smile, telling her yes, of course they would. But when Lily closed her eyes and drifted into sleep, Emily quietly let the first tear fall. A soft knock at the door broke the silence. Emily stiffened, wiping her face quickly. She walked to the door cautiously, peeking through the small crack before opening it fully. When she saw Ethan standing there, alone, holding nothing but the weight of his regret, her breath caught in her throat. She didn't speak at first. Neither did he. Finally, he said in a quiet, steady voice, "I'm not here to defend myself. I'm not here to ask for anything. I just need to know, are you and Lily all right?" Emily's eyes filled instantly. The anger she had held onto for weeks didn't disappear, but the exhaustion pushed through it. She stepped outside, closing the door gently behind her so Lily wouldn't wake. Her voice trembled as she spoke. "Why are you here, Ethan?" "Because I care about you," he said simply. "And I care about your daughter. And I'm sorry. For everything." Emily's breath shook. She didn't know what to say. Part of her wanted to yell at him again. Another part wanted to collapse into his arms. But she stayed standing, holding onto her last bit of strength. "You don't owe us anything," she whispered. "I know," he replied. "That's why I'm here." For the first time since the scandal broke, Emily believed him. She closed her eyes for a moment, and when she opened them again, her voice was softer. "I don't know if I can trust you," she said. "I don't know if I should." Ethan nodded, accepting the truth. Then he said something she didn't expect. "You don't have to trust me yet. Just let me help." Emily looked away, torn between fear and hope. But deep down, she knew she couldn't keep doing this alone. She was tired of struggling, of pretending, of carrying everything on her own shoulders. When she finally looked at him again, something in her expression had changed. "Ethan," she whispered, "I don't know what to do anymore." He took a slow step closer, careful not to overwhelm her. "Then let me help you figure it out." She didn't accept him. But she didn't send him away. And for the first time in weeks, she felt the smallest spark of relief. Their story was far from over, and the next chapter would change all three of their lives forever. Emily stepped outside fully, closing the door behind her so Lily wouldn't hear the conversation. Rain from earlier still clung to the air, leaving the night cool and heavy. She crossed her arms against the cold, but part of her did it out of uncertainty, as if she needed a barrier between them. Ethan didn't move closer, he simply stood there, soaked from the weather, hands in his pockets, eyes gentle but full of worry. "You shouldn't be here," Emily said quietly, her voice frayed around the edges. "People will talk again. They'll twist things even more." "Let them talk," Ethan replied softly. "I don't care what they say about me. I just care what happens to you and Lily." Emily looked down at her shoes, swallowing hard. She wasn't used to people worrying about her. Most people barely noticed her. She had built her life around the belief that she was invisible unless someone needed something from her. Ethan's concern left her unsure of herself. "Why now?" she whispered. "Why come after all this time?" "Because I should have come the day everything got out of control," he admitted. "I should have protected you. I should have told the truth. I should have trusted you with who I am. But I was scared." Emily looked up, surprised. "Scared? You?" Ethan gave a small, humorless laugh. "When people know who I am, they treat me differently. They want something from me. They change. But you didn't. And for a moment, I got to feel normal. I didn't want to lose that." Emily's chest tightened. She couldn't ignore the sincerity in his voice. It wasn't rehearsed. It wasn't polished like something a businessman would say during an interview. It felt raw, honest. "But you lied," she said, her voice soft but firm. "I did," Ethan answered quietly. "And I'm sorry. I wasn't trying to mislead you. I just wanted a moment to know you without the world interfering." Emily closed her eyes for a moment, letting out a slow breath. She understood his fear more than she expected. She'd just never imagined someone like him, wealthy, powerful, admired, could feel afraid of something as simple as being known. When she opened her eyes again, Ethan was still watching her, giving her all the time she needed. "Tell me the truth," she said. "Did you pay my rent? Did you fix my roof?" He hesitated only a second, then nodded. "Yes. I didn't want you and Lily living in unsafe conditions. I didn't want you worrying alone." Emily felt tears prick at her eyes despite herself. Part of her wanted to thank him. The other part wanted to scream at him for interfering. Instead, she whispered, "You shouldn't have done that." "You're probably right," Ethan said gently. "But I'd do it again." She didn't know what to say. She had grown so used to handling everything on her own that help felt foreign, dangerous even. But she also knew she couldn't carry everything anymore. She was running out of strength, of options, of hope. Ethan stepped slightly closer, still keeping a respectful distance. "Emily, let me help you. Not because I feel sorry for you. Not because I feel obligated. But because I care. And because you deserve better than the world has given you." Emily's breath caught. No one had said something like that to her in years. Maybe ever. She rubbed her arms, trying to gather herself. "I don't want charity," she said, voice trembling. "I'm not offering charity," Ethan replied. "I'm offering support. There's a difference. Charity is given out of pity. Support is given out of respect." Emily stared at him, and something inside her cracked, something hardened by years of disappointment and loneliness. She didn't fully trust him yet, but she didn't distrust him anymore either. "I don't know how to accept help," she finally admitted. "Then I'll teach you," Ethan said softly. "One step at a time. And only as much as you're comfortable with." Emily's throat tightened. She didn't nod, but she didn't walk away. Her silence was its own kind of answer. Suddenly, Lily's small voice came from inside the apartment, calling for her mom. Emily turned toward the door, instinctively ready to go to her daughter. Ethan stepped back immediately. "Go," he said quietly. "Take care of her." Emily hesitated, then looked back at him. "Are you coming back?" "Only if you want me to," Ethan replied. Emily held his gaze for a long moment. Rain dripped from the edge of the roof, tapping softly onto the railing between them. Then, in a voice barely louder than a whisper, she said, "You can come back tomorrow." Ethan's expression softened, something between relief and gratitude. "I'll be here," he said. Emily nodded once before turning back to the door. As she stepped inside, she felt something unfamiliar settle within her, a fragile, cautious hope. Ethan walked away slowly, hands in his pockets, heart pounding with a strange mix of fear and anticipation. For the first time in a long time, he wasn't thinking about his wealth, his reputation, or his company. He was thinking about Emily. About Lily. And about the possibility of something real. Their lives had begun to intertwine in ways neither had expected. And tomorrow would bring a new shift neither of them could predict. The next morning, Emily woke up earlier than usual. She didn't know why, maybe nerves, maybe hope, but her body stirred before the sun appeared. Lily was still asleep, curled up with her stuffed rabbit, breathing softly. Emily watched her daughter for a moment, brushing a strand of hair from her forehead. Everything she did was for this child. Every sacrifice, every sleepless night, every fear. Lily was her whole world. Emily prepared a simple breakfast, her mind drifting to what she had told Ethan the night before. "You can come back tomorrow." She couldn't believe she had said it. She had pushed him away so firmly, yet now she was allowing him in again. It scared her. She didn't know whether he would bring comfort or chaos into her life. But she knew she couldn't keep surviving alone. Not anymore. Around late morning, a soft knock came at the door. Emily felt her heart rise to her throat. She hesitated for a moment, then opened it. Ethan stood on the other side, dressed casually, no suit, no expensive watch, just jeans, a gray sweater, and a hopeful expression. Emily stepped aside, letting him enter. The apartment was small, cluttered, worn. She felt embarrassed suddenly, smoothing the blanket on the couch, adjusting a toy on the floor. Ethan looked around, not with judgment but with quiet understanding. He took everything in, the tiny kitchen, the peeling paint, the drawings taped to the fridge, and he looked at it all as if it mattered. Lily peeked out from her room, rubbing her eyes. When she saw Ethan, she brightened instantly. Ethan knelt down to greet her, smiling warmly. "Hey, Lily. Did you sleep well?" She nodded shyly, holding out her stuffed rabbit for him to see. He admired it seriously, just like he had admired her flower weeks before, making her giggle. Emily watched the interaction with a softness she tried to hide. Ethan wasn't pretending. He wasn't forcing himself to care. He was simply being himself, kind, patient, gentle. It was the one thing she hadn't expected from a man with money. They spent the afternoon talking while Lily colored quietly at the small table. Ethan asked Emily about her interests, her dreams, things she hadn't let herself think about in years. She told him she used to love writing when she was younger, but she stopped once life started weighing down on her. She told him she imagined opening a bakery someday but knew it was impossible. Ethan listened, absorbing every word, but he didn't offer solutions or money. He just listened. At one point, Lily tugged on his sleeve, asking if he wanted to play a game with her. Ethan sat on the floor with her, rolling a tiny rubber ball back and forth. He laughed with her, encouraging her when she caught it, clapping dramatically when she missed on purpose to make her smile. Emily leaned against the wall, watching them, feeling something in her chest she hadn't felt in years, peace. Later, Ethan helped Emily wash the dishes, though she protested at first. He rolled up his sleeves and joked that he was terrible at domestic chores, but he did it anyway. They stood side by side at the sink, warm water running over their hands, talking softly. For a moment, it almost felt like a family. As the evening approached, Lily grew sleepy. Emily lifted her into her arms, tucking her into bed with gentle tenderness. When she returned to the living room, Ethan was standing near the window, looking at the darkening sky. He turned when she approached. "Emily," he said quietly, "I don't want to make things harder for you. If my being here causes trouble, if people talk, if you feel uncomfortable, just tell me. I'll stay away." She shook her head immediately. "It's not you," she said. "It's everything else. I don't know how to let people in. I don't know how to trust anyone anymore." Ethan nodded slowly. "I understand. But you don't have to trust me all at once. You don't owe me anything. I just want to be someone you can rely on, even if that takes time." Emily took a breath, feeling the weight of her fears pressing against the hope blooming inside her. She stepped closer, her voice barely audible. "Ethan, why do you care so much?" His eyes softened. "Because you're strong. Because you're honest. Because you care more about your daughter than most people care about themselves. Because every time I see you, I want to be better than I am." Emily's breath caught. She looked away, suddenly overwhelmed. She felt a warmth rise in her chest and tried to push it down. Feelings were dangerous. Hope was dangerous. But Ethan wasn't pushing her. He wasn't demanding anything. He was simply offering himself, a rare kindness she didn't know how to accept. They stood in silence for a moment. Finally, Emily whispered, "I'm scared." "I am too," Ethan admitted. The honesty between them settled like a fragile thread, delicate but real. Ethan left shortly after, but before he stepped out the door, he turned back to her. "May I come by again tomorrow?" he asked. Emily hesitated, then nodded. Yes. You can. He smiled softly before leaving, and Emily closed the door behind him, leaning against it with a trembling breath. She wasn't sure where this was going, but for the first time in years, something inside her whispered that maybe, just maybe, life could be different. Across the city, Ethan drove home in silence, his thoughts consumed by Emily and Lily. The echo of her words, "I'm scared," stayed with him. He understood that fear. He carried his own. But he also carried something new, the desire to protect them, to be part of their lives, to be someone they could trust. The next steps would not be easy. Their worlds were too far apart, their scars too deep. But the connection growing between them was undeniable. And soon, a new event would force them to confront exactly what they meant to each other. Over the next week, Ethan visited Emily and Lily every afternoon. He never arrived unannounced, he always texted first, asking if it was okay. Sometimes Emily replied late, unsure of her own feelings, but she always said yes. And each time he came, something in her apartment felt lighter. He helped Lily with her homework, though he often pretended not to understand simple questions just to make her laugh. He fixed the loose cabinet door in the kitchen. He brought Emily tea when she looked tired but never pity in his eyes. Their connection deepened in small, gentle ways, through shared silence, quiet conversations, and the soft laughter they hadn't realized they missed. But the world outside wasn't as gentle. One afternoon, Emily walked Lily home from school when she noticed a photographer across the street aiming his camera directly at them. Emily froze. She pulled Lily close and hurried toward the apartment building, her heart pounding. When she reached her door, she double-locked it, trembling. Lily asked why the men took their picture, but Emily didn't know how to explain something she didn't fully understand herself. That evening, when Ethan arrived, Emily didn't answer the door at first. She stood behind it, breathing unevenly, unsure if she wanted him to see her like this, frightened and vulnerable. Ethan knocked softly again and said her name gently. Emily opened the door just enough for him to see her eyes, red and tired. Without speaking, she stepped aside and let him in. He immediately noticed her shaking hands and knelt down slightly to meet her gaze. "What happened?" he asked. Emily swallowed hard. "Someone took our picture today. Someone followed us home." Ethan's face hardened, not with anger at her, but with anger at the world invading her privacy. "I'm so sorry. This is my fault. I'm going to fix this." But Emily shook her head. "I don't want you to fix it, Ethan. I want it to stop. I want my daughter safe. I can't live like this." She pressed her palms to her face, trying to steady herself. "I don't know how to protect her from people like that." Ethan took a slow breath. "Then let me help you protect her." Emily looked at him, eyes wide with fear and confusion. "How?" she whispered. Ethan hesitated before speaking. "I can provide security. A private driver. A safer place to live. Somewhere far from the spotlight. Just until things calm down." Emily stepped back, shaking her head. "No. No, Ethan. That's too much. That's your world, not mine." "It doesn't have to be my world," he said. "It can just be safety." Emily stared at him, feeling torn in two directions. She wanted to protect Lily more than anything, but accepting help at this level felt like giving up control of her life. She whispered, "I don't want you to feel responsible for us." "I don't feel responsible," Ethan said softly. "I feel connected." Before Emily could respond, a loud thud hit the door, startling both of them. Someone had slipped an envelope under it. Emily jumped, heart racing, and Ethan immediately went to check it. Inside the envelope was a printed tabloid article with their pictures, circled in red, and a handwritten note, "More coming soon." Emily's knees nearly buckled. Ethan caught her by the arm, steadying her. Lily, who had been coloring quietly in her room, came running out, frightened by the noise. "Mommy, what's happening?" Emily knelt and pulled her daughter close, kissing the top of her head. "Nothing, sweetie. Everything is fine." But her voice trembled, betraying her fear. Ethan crouched down too, speaking softly to Lily. "You're safe. I promise." Emily met his eyes, and for the first time, she didn't try to hide the fear or the exhaustion. She let him see all of it, the part she always protected from the world. Ethan saw something break inside her, not a collapse but a surrender to the truth. She could not face this alone. She took a shaky breath. "What do we do?" she whispered. Ethan stood slowly, offering his hand, not with force, not with expectation, but with sincerity. Come stay with me for a few days. Just until things calm down. You and Lily will be safe there. No reporters. No strangers. No threats. Emily stared at his hand, her heart pounding wildly. Every instinct in her told her to run from anything that looked like dependence. But when she looked at Lily trembling in her arms, she knew instinct alone could not guide her anymore. She lifted her eyes to Ethan's. And in a small, fragile voice, she said, "Okay. Just for a few days." Ethan nodded gently, relief crossing his face, not triumph, not pride, just relief. Emily gathered a small bag, packing only essentials. Lily clung to her toy rabbit, confused but trusting her mother completely. When they stepped outside, Ethan stayed close, scanning the street cautiously. A black SUV with tinted windows waited quietly, a security vehicle he kept for emergencies. As he helped Emily and Lily inside, she hesitated once more. "Are you sure this is a good idea?" she whispered. Ethan met her eyes. "I'm sure of one thing, Emily. You're not alone anymore." As the SUV pulled away, Emily held Lily close, watching the city fade behind them. She didn't know what awaited her in Ethan's world, a world of wealth, quiet halls, marble floors, but she knew one thing with absolute certainty. For the first time in a very long time, someone was standing beside her. Not above her. Not behind her. Beside her. And their lives were about to change in ways none of them could have imagined. The SUV moved silently through the city, its interior warm and quiet compared to the chaos outside. Emily sat beside Lily, holding her daughter's small hand while her eyes drifted to the passing skyline. She felt like she was leaving her entire world behind, even if only for a few days. The familiar streets grew distant, swallowed by taller buildings and wider roads. She wondered whether she was doing the right thing, wondered whether trusting Ethan was wise or foolish. Ethan sat across from them, watching quietly, careful not to intrude on her thoughts. He sensed her tension, the way her shoulders stayed tight, the way she glanced at the windows as if expecting someone to follow them. He hated that she had been pushed to this point. If his world hadn't collided with hers, she would never have faced this kind of exposure. He felt the weight of that with every breath. After a long drive, the SUV turned onto a private road lined with tall trees. Emily looked out the window, surprise flickering in her eyes. At the end of the road stood Ethan's home, or what Emily could only describe as a mansion. It was large but not ostentatious, modern but warm, with wide glass windows and soft golden lighting. The kind of place she had only seen in magazines or movies. She felt her stomach twist. This wasn't her world. This wasn't even close. She glanced at Lily, worried the little girl would feel out of place, but Lily's eyes were wide with wonder, not fear. The SUV stopped, and Ethan stepped out first, offering his hand to help them out. Emily hesitated, but she took it, steadying herself. When she looked up at the towering home again, she whispered, "This is temporary. I don't want Lily thinking this is ours." Ethan nodded gently. "She'll know it's just for a few days. And you'll have your privacy here, I promise." Inside, the house was peaceful, too peaceful for someone like Emily who was used to thin walls, noisy neighbors, and the constant hum of the city. The floors were polished, the air smelled faintly of eucalyptus, and large windows overlooked a quiet garden. A woman approached, middle-aged, kind eyes, dressed simply. Ethan introduced her as Helen, the housekeeper. Helen greeted Emily and Lily warmly, kneeling to speak to the girl at eye level, making her feel comfortable immediately. Emily relaxed a little. Ethan led them upstairs to a guest room that was brighter and larger than Emily's entire apartment. It had a soft bed, clean linens, a window seat overlooking the garden, and a small table with crayons and paper already set out, something Helen must have quickly prepared for Lily. Emily's breath caught in her throat. "You didn't have to do all this," she whispered. "I wanted to make it welcoming for her," Ethan said. "And for you." Emily didn't know how to respond. She traced her hand over the smooth blanket, then helped Lily settle in. Lily jumped onto the bed, giggling at how soft it was compared to her own lumpy mattress. Emily felt a sting in her chest, a mix of sadness, gratitude, and fear. After Lily was distracted with coloring, Ethan asked quietly if Emily wanted to see the rest of the house. She nodded, though she stayed close to the guest room, keeping Lily in sight. They walked down a hallway lined with framed photographs. Most were of landscapes, not people. Emily noticed the absence immediately.
"You don't have family pictures?" she asked.
Ethan gave a small smile. "No. My parents passed away when I was a teenager. And I've never had anyone else to take pictures with." Emily felt something soften inside her.
She hadn't known that.
She hadn't expected to share that kind of connection. Loss was something she understood, even if the details were different. She looked at him with new eyes, seeing the loneliness behind his controlled exterior. They ended the tour in the living room, where a fire crackled softly in the fireplace. Ethan motioned for her to sit, but Emily remained standing for a moment, unsure of where she belonged in a house like this. Ethan sensed her hesitation and stepped closer, keeping his voice gentle.
"Emily, you're safe here.
No expectations. No pressure. Just safety." Emily finally sat, feeling the warmth of the fire seep into her chilled hands. She stared at the flames for a long time, lost in thought.
Ethan sat across from her, giving her space. "What if this was a mistake?"
she whispered suddenly. "It wasn't," Ethan said immediately.
"You needed help. And I wanted to help.
That's all."
Emily shook her head.
"No. I mean, what if letting you into my life was a mistake? What if trusting you is another way to get hurt?"
Ethan's expression softened.
"Then I'll spend as long as it takes proving that it isn't." Emily looked up, meeting his eyes. There was no arrogance there, no pressure. Just truth. And something inside her loosened. Lily appeared in the doorway, holding her stuffed rabbit.
"Mommy, can I sleep here tonight?"
she asked sleepily. Emily nodded, and Ethan smiled at her gently. "You should rest too," he said. "It's been a long day."
Emily stood, gathering herself.
Before she left the room, Ethan added quietly, "I'm right here if you need anything." Emily paused, then said something she hadn't said in years, not to anyone outside her daughter. "Thank you." She led Lily back to the guest room, tucked her into bed, and lay beside her for a moment. Lily mumbled sleepily, "He's nice, Mommy." Emily pressed her forehead to her daughter's and whispered, "I know." Later that night, when the house was silent, Emily stepped to the window and looked out at the dark garden. She felt safe for the first time in months. Maybe years. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring. She didn't know what being in Ethan's world truly meant.
But she knew one thing.
For the first time, the weight wasn't entirely on her shoulders. And that changed everything. Emily woke the next morning to the soft sound of birds outside the window. For a moment, she forgot where she was. The sunlight poured gently across the bed, warming her face. She blinked slowly, adjusting to the bright room, then turned to see Lily curled beside her, sleeping deeply. It felt like peace, something she hadn't felt in a long time. When she stepped into the hallway, she smelled food. She followed the scent downstairs and found Helen in the kitchen cooking breakfast. Helen smiled warmly and offered Emily a seat. She made everything look so effortless, so calm. Emily felt out of place again, unsure how much she was allowed to touch, use, or even breathe in this house. Ethan entered the kitchen a moment later, still in casual clothes, his hair slightly messy, as if he'd barely slept. When he saw her, he smiled gently, not wanting to overwhelm her. "Morning, Emily. Did you sleep all right?" She nodded slowly. "Yes. It was nice."
Ethan seemed relieved.
"Good. That's all I wanted." Lily came bounding into the room seconds later, her curls bouncing with each step. She hopped onto a chair happily, immediately impressed by the variety of food on the table: pancakes, fresh fruit, eggs. Emily felt embarrassed by the abundance, but Ethan insisted gently that they eat. After breakfast, Ethan received a call he had to take for work. He apologized, stepped away, and disappeared into his office. Emily watched him go, noticing the shift in his posture, the weight he carried as soon as he stepped into his world of responsibilities. She wondered how someone so powerful could also seem so alone. With Lily busy playing with crayons on the dining table, Emily wandered to the garden door. She stepped outside, letting the cool morning air wash over her. She stood on the patio, arms wrapped around herself.
She knew she couldn't stay here forever. She needed a job.
She needed stability. She needed to rebuild her own life, not borrow someone else's.
But she couldn't deny how safe she felt here. How quiet her mind was. How much she had needed a moment to breathe. Ethan joined her outside a little later, standing beside her without saying anything at first. They watched the wind rustle the leaves. Emily finally spoke, her voice soft. "I don't want to depend on you. I don't want to be someone you rescue." Ethan looked at her gently. "I'm not asking you to depend on me. I'm asking you to let me stand with you." "There's a difference." Emily closed her eyes, feeling the sting of tears she refused to let fall. She wasn't used to words like that, words that sounded like care, not control. "You told me you were scared," Emily said quietly. "What exactly are you scared of?" Ethan hesitated. "That you'll push me away again. That I'll never get the chance to know what we could be. That you'll decide I'm not worth trusting." Emily's breath caught. She hadn't expected him to be so honest. For a man who lived surrounded by people, he seemed painfully alone. Before she could respond, Lily rushed outside, waving her drawing. "Mommy, look. I drew us and Ethan." Emily laughed softly despite the tension in her chest. The drawing was simple, 3 stick figures holding hands, a big sun above them, and a crooked little house behind them. Lily beamed proudly. Ethan knelt beside her to admire the artwork. "It's beautiful, Lily," he said. "Absolutely perfect." Lily hugged his neck without hesitation. He froze for a moment, startled by the affection, then returned the hug gently. Emily watched the scene, something blooming inside her that she tried to push down. Later that day, Ethan had to leave for an important business meeting. Before he left, he told Emily he'd return by evening. Emily nodded, though she felt a strange flutter of worry when he stepped out the door. She wasn't used to caring whether someone came back. While he was gone, Helen helped Emily wash clothes and prepare lunch. They talked quietly, and Helen revealed something Emily hadn't expected. Ethan had always been kind, but before meeting Emily and Lily, he was distant, almost guarded. He didn't let people get close. Helen said she had never seen him look at anyone the way he looked at Emily. Emily brushed it off, insisting that Ethan was simply being generous. Helen gave a small, knowing smile but said nothing more. When evening came, Lily fell asleep early. Emily sat in the living room, watching the shadows shift on the walls. Part of her felt foolish for waiting. Another part couldn't stop thinking about him. Ethan arrived just before 9. He looked tired but relaxed when he saw her. "Sorry it took longer than expected," he said. "It's okay," Emily replied. "You don't owe me explanations." "Maybe not," Ethan said, stepping closer. "But I want to give them." Emily looked down, unsure how to respond. Ethan's presence filled the room, not with arrogance, but with quiet sincerity. They sat near the fireplace again, the flames casting warm light on their faces. Ethan spoke first. "Emily, I need to ask you something. It's not pressure, not expectation, just honesty." Emily nodded slowly, bracing herself. "Do you want me here? Or am I making things harder?" Emily felt her heart tighten. She didn't answer right away. She thought about the safety, the comfort, the laughter Lily had shared with him. She thought about the fear she had felt when reporters followed them. She thought about the warmth in Ethan's eyes every time he looked at her. Finally, she whispered, "I want you here." Ethan exhaled softly, almost in relief. Emily continued, her voice shaking. "But I'm still scared." "So am I," Ethan said. "But maybe we can be scared together." For the first time, Emily didn't step back from him. She didn't put up a wall. She let the moment breathe. She let him in, just a little. Outside, the world was still chaotic, still full of threats and uncertainty. But inside that quiet living room, with the fire crackling softly, Emily allowed herself to believe that maybe something good was beginning. Something real. Something worth fighting for. The next morning, Emily woke with a strange sense of calm. She didn't know if it came from the safety of the house, from Lily's steady breathing beside her, or from knowing Ethan was somewhere nearby. For the first time in years, she didn't feel alone. She didn't feel like she was carrying the world on her shoulders. But peace never lasted long in her life. Around noon, while Lily was coloring in the living room, Ethan received a call from his legal team. He stepped outside to take it, but Emily could still hear the tension in his voice. When he returned, his expression was serious. Emily asked what was wrong, and he hesitated before telling her the truth. The tabloids had escalated the story.
They were now digging for personal information about Emily, her job history, her financial struggles, even Lily's school. A major outlet planned to release a full article the next morning. Ethan said he was working with attorneys to block it, but the storm was growing faster than he could contain.
Emily felt her stomach twist. She had known this couldn't last.
She had known stepping into Ethan's world could only bring danger, not safety.
She whispered that she should leave, pack her things, take Lily back home.
She said this wasn't his burden to carry and that she didn't want to destroy his reputation.
Ethan didn't let her finish.
Emily, he said firmly, this is not your fault. And you're not running.
Not anymore.
I won't let them turn your life into a headline.
She shook her head, tears forming. You can protect yourself.
But I can't protect my daughter from your world.
Ethan stepped closer.
Then let me protect both of you. His voice didn't sound like a promise made out of pity, it sounded like a vow from someone who finally understood what truly mattered.
Emily felt her resistance weaken.
She had spent so much of her life fighting alone that she didn't know how to let someone stand beside her. Before she could respond, the front gate alarm sounded. Ethan checked the monitors and saw 2 reporters at the entrance, trying to speak to the security guard.
Emily froze, panic tightening her chest.
Lily looked up from her drawing, confused by the sudden tension. Ethan acted quickly, reassuring Emily that the reporters couldn't get in and that security was already escorting them away.
But the damage was done.
Emily saw fear in Lily's eyes, fear she had never wanted her daughter to experience.
That fear changed something inside her.
She turned to Ethan, shoulders trembling, and said, I can't keep doing this. I can't let them drag my daughter into something she doesn't understand.
We need a solution.
A real one.
Ethan nodded.
I know. And I have one.
He took a breath, steadying himself. Then he said something that stunned her.
Move in with me. Not just temporarily.
Permanently.
I'll make sure you and Lily are safe.
You'll have stability.
A home. A fresh start.
Emily's heart pounded. She stared at him, unable to speak.
Ethan continued, voice gentle but strong. I know it's sudden. I know it's overwhelming. But I'm not offering this out of impulse. I care about you.
I care about Lily.
I want to build something with you, something real.
Something safe.
You don't have to say yes today. Or tomorrow. But I need you to know that I want you in my life. Both of you.
Emily stepped back, covering her mouth with trembling hands. No one had ever offered her safety before. No one had ever chosen her. Not like this. She whispered, Ethan.
I've lost so much. I'm terrified of losing something else.
Ethan stepped closer, gently lifting her chin.
Then let's not lose anything. Let's build it.
Tears spilled down her cheeks. She didn't know whether they were from fear or relief. Probably both.
Lily walked over, sensing her mother's emotions, and wrapped her arms around Emily's waist. Emily held her daughter tightly, then looked at Ethan again.
She didn't say yes.
But she didn't say no. That evening, while Lily slept, Emily and Ethan sat by the fire. She rested her head against his shoulder, a silent acceptance that she was letting him in, even if she wasn't ready for full promises yet. Ethan wrapped an arm around her, holding her gently, as if afraid she might break. Days passed. The legal team succeeded in blocking the worst articles, and the media frenzy slowly calmed. Emily still worried, but the panic that once controlled her began to fade. She started to see the possibility of a life that didn't revolve around fear. One night, Lily asked Ethan if they could stay forever. Emily's breath caught, but Ethan answered delicately.
That depends on your mom, he said with a smile.
Emily looked away, overwhelmed, but the truth was forming inside her, quietly, steadily. A few weeks later, Emily made a decision. She stood with Ethan in the garden, the late afternoon sun warming the backyard. Lily played nearby, chasing butterflies. Emily turned to Ethan, voice trembling but certain. We will stay, she said softly. If you still want us. Ethan froze, eyes widening, a slow smile spreading across his face. Of course I want you.
More than anything. Emily didn't hesitate anymore.
She stepped forward, resting her forehead against his. For the first time, she allowed herself to believe she deserved happiness. He pulled her into his arms, not possessively, but protectively, lovingly. Lily ran over, laughing as she hugged both of them, her tiny arms trying to wrap around two grown bodies.
It wasn't a fairy tale. It wasn't perfect. But it was real.
And for Emily, after years of loneliness, survival, and fear, real was more than enough. Their small family, unexpected, fragile, beautiful, began that day. Not because a millionaire saved a single mother, but because two people who had lived separate, painful lives decided to choose each other.
Carefully. Bravely. And with their whole hearts.